Pope Leo wasted no time in calling out Donald Trump for bombing Iran, the new leader of the Roman Catholic Church, who has a reputation as being non-confrontational, used his Sunday address to criticize Trump, and it's going to place Catholics, especially conservative Catholics, in a very uncomfortable situation. I'm going to show several clips from the Pope's address, so keep watching because it's a complete and total takedown of Generalissimo Bone Spurs, and because the last clip blows the roof off the house, or the basilica, as the case may be. And this should come as no surprise to anyone. Pope Leo has criticized Trump several times before, both as Cardinal Robert Prevost and even as the new Pope. So he certainly wasn't going to remain silent when Trump acted against both U.S. law and UN agreements. And of course, as a man who lived for 20 years in Peru, ministering to the mostly forgotten people of South America, Cardinal Prevost was going to be a strong advocate for the marginalized and for immigrants. Well, for Pope Leo, Trump is exactly the kind of mean-spirited rich guy who never looks out for anyone but himself that the former missionary priest has no time for. It's true, he didn't say anything about Trump falling asleep at the Pope's installation, but he didn't exactly give J.D. Vance a warm welcome at their first formal meeting. Watch how dismissive he is of Trump when he greets Vance. The Pope basically cast aside Trump's letter. You get the distinct feeling that had a large enough wastebasket been available, it would have been used. And if you think popes are single-issue guys, that Pope Leo is only concerned about migration and has a ho-hum attitude about war, you would be very much mistaken. A lot of U.S. cardinals were willing to look the other way when Bush and his war machine were in high gear, or at least limit themselves to platitudes. But Pope Leo is decidedly not one of those kinds of guys. So today's remarks were leveled right at Trump, and that becomes clear when you remember two things about Pope Leo. First, he's a really smart guy who is very media savvy. And two, he models the behavior he wants to see in the world. So does he call out Trump as a petulant man-baby who only went to war to prove he's tough? Well, actually, if you read between the lines, you'll certainly see. So watch this. Alarming news flows from the Middle East, especially Iran. In this dramatic scenario, which includes Israel and Palestine, the daily suffering of the population risks being forgotten, especially in Gaza and other territories, where the urgency for adequate humanitarian support is becoming more and more pressing. Right out of the gate, Pope Leo comes out and says that the bombing of Iran is intimately linked to Israel's war on Gaza and is nothing less than a diversion tactic to make us look the other way from the violence, killing, and starvation going on there thanks to Trump and Netanyahu. Notice the emphasis he puts on Israel's policy of not letting aid through. He's telling both Netanyahu and Trump, I've got my eye on you. And that's just the start. Now watch what he says next. War does not solve problems. That was the Pope going right for the jugular. The statement that war does not solve problems completely pulls the rug out from under Trump, who tries to justify his war crime by saying that Iran is not allowed to possess a nuclear weapon. The Pope just slammed that lame excuse, but it immediately gets worse for Trump. Watch. On the contrary, it amplifies them and produces deep wounds in the history of people, which take generations to heal. So war does not solve problems, it only amplifies them, is another way of saying only an idiot believes you can achieve peace through war. And then he immediately backs that up by saying it takes generations for the wounds to heal. In other words, you're too dumb to know the consequences of war. That, in and of itself, is a pretty complete takedown, but the Pope wasn't finished. He then went after Trump in terms of his insulated privilege. Watch. No armed victory can compensate for the pain of mothers, the fear of children, the stolen future. The pain of mothers and the stolen future of children is a direct indictment of Trump and those like him who control and command war but will never suffer the consequences. Only the people on the ground do. We all know that unlike Biden's son Beau, Trump's son Barron is not going to be serving on the ground in the military. He's too good for that. I mean, if that doesn't finish off Trump, I don't know what does. But Pope Leo still wasn't finished. Watch. May diplomacy silence weapons. And now for the completely dramatic ending. Pope Leo shifts from Trump and Netanyahu to sending a message to Iran. Watch. May nations shape their future with works of peace, not violence and bloody conflicts. So here, Leo is telling Iran, if you want self-determination, act peacefully and you'll be accepted into the world community. Reject the violence of Trump and Netanyahu. And the reason Iran can believe him is because he just got done excoriating Trump and Netanyahu. The Pope could not have been any clearer. He will not stand with Trump, and he will not offer any excuses for what is being done. That's going to be a very troubling message for Catholics who believe they can still support Trump. After this message, Catholics are going to have to face up to the words of Jesus. No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. So go ahead, Catholics, Trump or Leo. The choice is obvious. Reporting from Rome, I'm Anthony Vincent Gallo for Occupy Democrats.